The word profane probably makes you think of something vulgar or evil, but in the ancient priestly system, your breakfast this morning was profane, your shoes are profane, you're probably profane right now, and that's completely fine. Profane doesn't mean bad, it means common, ordinary, not dedicated to God. So what system are we actually dealing with? To understand, we need to learn two separate classification systems that governed everything in ancient Israelite sacred life. The priestly worldview operates on two independent binary systems. The first axis, holy versus common. When this tracks ownership status. Is something dedicated to God or not? The second axis, pure versus impure. This tracks access qualification. Can something approach sacred space? These aren't the same thing. They operate on completely different dimensions. Understanding this distinction unlocks the entire system. Let's start with the first binary, holy versus common. The Hebrew root for holy means separate, withdrawn from ordinary use. Only God is intrinsically holy. Everything else becomes holy through dedication or ownership by God. Common or profane is simply the default state. Your house, your food, your clothing, all common, neutral, not negative. Objects can move between these states. Sanctification moves something from common to holy through dedication to God. Profanation is the reverse. When something loses its holy status, it becomes common again. And these movements are central to how the sanctuary system operates. Now, the second binary, pure versus impure. Purity means qualification to access the sacred. Impurity means disqualification from sacred contact. Here's the key insight. Being impure at home is no problem. You can be impure while eating dinner, sleeping, going about daily life. Impurity only matters when you want to approach the sanctuary. A farmer could be impure for days and face no consequences as long as he stayed away from sacred space. Purity isn't about moral status, it's about access rights. This distinction changes how we read every purity law in Leviticus. These two systems combine to create only four possible states: holy and pure, the required state for sacred objects and priests serving in the sanctuary. Holy and impure, impossible. This combination cannot exist. When impure contacts holy, something catastrophic happens. We'll see what in a moment. Common and pure, perfectly fine. This person can approach the sanctuary if needed. Common and impure, also fine, as long as you stay home. Most Israelites spend most of their lives in this state. The system doesn't demand constant purity. It demands purity at the right moments. The priestly system organizes space into concentric circles of increasing holiness. Start outside the camp, ordinary territory, no special rules. Move into the camp, the community of Israel, some basic purity expectations. Enter the courtyard. Now you need to be pure. Only pure Israelites can bring offerings here. Step into the sanctuary. Only priests may enter, and only when pure. Finally, the Holy of Holies, the innermost chamber where God's presence dwells. Only the high priest enters, only once per year, only after extensive purification. Each boundary requires higher qualification. Proximity to God correlates directly with holiness level. The same graduated structure exists in time. Ordinary workdays, minimal restrictions, holy days like Passover and the New Year festivals, additional rules of separation, special offerings required. The Sabbath, more restrictions still. No work, dedicated entirely to rest and worship. And at the center, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the Sabbath of Sabbaths, the holiest moment in the calendar. Rules of separation reach their maximum. The pattern mirrors sacred space. As holiness intensifies, requirements for access increase proportionally. Now we can understand why the system has such elaborate protective rules. What happens when impure contacts holy? Catastrophe, a two-step catastrophe. First, the holy object becomes impure, contamination transfers instantly. Second, and this is crucial, the object also becomes profane. It loses its holy status entirely. One collision triggers both consequences. The sacred vessel is now both impure and common. Restoration requires two separate steps in the correct order. First, purification. Remove the impurity through the prescribed rituals. Only then can re-sanctification occur, dedicating the object back to God. Skip a step or reverse the order, and restoration fails. This explains the system's apparent paranoia about boundaries. Every protective rule exists to prevent that collision. The elaborate washing rituals, the waiting periods, the barriers between zones, all designed to keep impure from contacting holy. The priests aren't being arbitrary. They're maintaining a coherent system where sacred boundaries must remain intact. Breach those boundaries, and you don't just have a mess to clean up. You have a theological crisis requiring careful sequential restoration. Where does all this logic converge? In one dramatic annual ritual, Yom Kippur, watch how every dimension of holiness reaches its maximum simultaneously. The holiest person, the high priest, the only one qualified for this moment. The holiest place, the Holy of Holies entered on no other day, the holiest time. Yom Kippur itself, the Sabbath of Sabbaths, the holiest objects, the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat, where atonement occurs. 4 dimensions of maximum holiness converging in a single ritual moment, and this is why the high priest required the highest degree of purity. Any contamination here would be catastrophic. The entire system's logic becomes visible in this single ritual. The concentric circles of space collapse to their innermost point. The concentric circles of time reach their annual climax. The strictest purity requirements apply to the one person who must enter. Every rule we've discussed exists to make this moment possible. The elaborate preparations, the multiple washings, the special garments, the precise timing, all serve to bring one purified human being into direct proximity with divine presence without triggering the catastrophic collision between impure and holy. Next time you read Leviticus and encounter elaborate purity rules, you'll see not arbitrary restrictions, but a coherent system. 2 separate binaries: holy versus common tracking ownership, pure versus impure tracking access. Graduated hierarchies in both space and time, the impossibility of holy and impure coexisting, and the dramatic convergence of all categories on Yom Kippur. The priestly writers weren't creating random taboos. They were protecting the boundaries between human and the divine realms with systematic precision. Once you see the logic, the entire book transforms from puzzling rules into elegant architecture.